Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming at you again for another Film Fanatic show. This show is part two of my Thanksgiving day or evening of watching movies. I did a show yesterday where I uploaded it the same day of some movies that I watched. You know, movies are uh, a big part of the holidays for my family, and we basically usually even even saying that, like, outside of that, like, even if I go over to my family's, my mom and dad's or something for dinner, typically we'll always at the end of, after dinner, we'll sit down and watch a movie. That's like a typical thing for us, and that's like what we uh, what we do usually all the time. And so it's always been a part of it, and especially around the holidays. I usually try to, grab a bunch of movies, and we'll sit and chill out and watch movies. Last night we watched two movies in a row, and so I did a show yesterday on. We watched a couple of movies on Wednesday night, and then last night. And my brother and his wife were up, so it was a cool little gathering, and it was fun, and ate a lot of food and felt really bloated and just too full, but it was great meal. And then having time to relax, and then we watched some movies. And the first night, Wednesday night, we watched, what did we watch? We watched The Equalizer Part 3, and then also they went to bed really early, and so I took the other one of the movies out of the bunch that I bought that I thought they would not want to watch. So, which was a movie I'd been wanting to see actually for a long time. James Wan's Dead Silence. James Wan, of course, probably his most well-known film is The Conjuring, which I think is just just an amazing horror film on so many levels. Um, so I had been anticipating to see that movie. The funny thing is about my family too, like my mom and dad and myself, like they're kind of night owls. They stay up pretty late, and I'm obviously definitely a night person. I do My schedule is really different now. I am I get up a lot earlier. I find for my work at home and stuff, in my schedule, it's just a little bit more productive. I don't really sleep in late anymore. Like so, but I still tend to stay up a little too late and probably get up a little too early. But that's all right. I but I typically am still like a night person. But my brother and his wife, they go to bed way on the early side. They were in bed by 8:30 on Wednesday night. So my brother gets up at like 3:45 or 4 every morning. So you're gonna be tired by the time 8 o'clock rolls by. So it's kind of funny. I don't know anybody that goes to bed that early. So it's pretty funny. I'm trying to tonight. I have it's kind of a funny thing. I have a couple of friends that are playing some music at this really awesome place called Hey Sailor. And I really want to go to it. I'm going to go to it. And so the show starts at like 6, and they're both doing two different sets. My friend Ronnie and my friend Halsey, and they're just amazing. And I'm fortunate enough to play in a band with them. And then next week we're actually playing there with my band Quantum. We're playing at the same venue. Such an awesome spot. But anyway, so the show starts at 6. Usually their shows start like at 7. And so, but the show Ronnie goes on at 6 o'clock, so it's a little bit of an earlier show, but it goes to like 9 or 10. So because I realize how early they go to bed, by 7:30, 8:30, they're going to be wiped out. So I'm almost thinking of asking them if they want to meet there and take two different cars because they're gonna crash. So it's kind of funny. Not something I thought would have been a factor. Not a, not the case of like, this music that they play, the music that they play is might not be their cup of tea, but it's really great, and they might really like it. It's probably different than what they have heard before, so but so it'll be interesting. But the factor that they go to bed at 8:30, I'm almost thinking of maybe we should take two cars so they can go home and go to sleep because I want to stay for the whole show. So I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, last night the movies that we watched Wednesday night were pretty disappointing. Um, and I did a review on both of those films. So the movies that we watched last night for Thanksgiving. I was much more excited about watching them. I was looking forward to them. I had heard good things. I definitely had more anticipation about seeing those films. So the first movie that we watched, which I actually heard from actually a good friend who actually saw it in the theater, and I had seen a couple little reviews online and saying that this film was actually really good, and it's the Boogeyman. It's the based on this short story from Stephen King. There's a movie that came a version of the Boogeyman that came out I think in the early 2000s. That's not very good. Very popular story. And I was curious about this movie. I remember seeing the trailer for this in the theater, and I thought it looked promising. I thought it looked pretty promising. Some of the buzz around the film was pretty good. I do like the director quite a bit. I've seen I've only seen one of his films. Rob Savage, who is a director who did a really interesting and very cool found footage movie called The Host or Host. And it was a movie that actually was shot and was also released during the height of the COVID crisis. It was actually released during lockdown. And so it's literally, the entire film is literally shot on Zoom. And it's actually really good. It's actually very well done. It's actually very suspenseful. And there's no budget on this film, on that film really at all, in comparison to any other film or any other traditional horror film. I was impressed. It had had a real cool visual look, and it had, for what it was, it generally had some suspense, and I was like, this is kind of cool. This is interesting. And, I'm not a huge fan of the found footage movies, but hey, at the end of the day, if it's good, it's good. I mean, I don't really care if whatever the movie is shot on or what the format is or what style it is. If it's good, it's good. It doesn't really matter. But it was impressive. I thought it was definitely one of the better movies of that year as far as newer horror films. And I definitely thought as far as like the found footage kind of thing, or the found footage genre, it was definitely one of the best. He's done a couple other movies that I have not seen, but this Boogeyman was his first like official Hollywood movie, if you want to call it that. And so I was anticipating. So we watched it, and overall, I was disappointed with it. To be totally honest, I was kind of let down by it, and I was a little bit frustrated. Um, and slightly aggravated by the end of the movie. And and again, it's one of those things that I feel it's got so many cool ingredients in the pot of this film, in the making of this film. He's a I think the direction was really cool. The cinematography was very cool. The cast was good. The writing was pretty good. There's a sequence in the first half of the film, without giving anything away, that I thought was really interesting, and you're kind of like taken on this journey of whether it's like a dream, whether you're in a dream state or it is actually happening. I thought that was really interesting. There's a few interesting little twists and turns involving some of the characters. particularly one character you don't see very often, but he is very strong, and I do like the family dynamic between the father and the daughter, and then and the film is about the this family kind of coming to terms with the loss of their mother, and this supposed like monster that lives under the bed or lives in the dark closet to at night, hence the name the Boogeyman. And it's, the Boogeyman is a classic mythical story, but and it was good. It was good up until that point. The things that I thought were a little bit disappointing, or at least where it started for me, was kind of the stereotypical jump scares. I thought there were a few jump scares in the film that were, I don't know, they were a little bit, for me they didn't really have the impact that I thought they would. It was good, but it was okay. The other thing that I felt this movie was a little bit too long. I thought it dragged, and I thought I was kind of surprised on how the story itself and the narrative, like, of course, it's a classic kind of story. It's the Boogeyman tale. We all know it. We all are familiar with it. It's pretty straightforward. But I kind of felt I was hoping for more for this film. I was hoping they were going to have a little bit more of an original approach to the story. And, it was so, I don't know, it was so straight and so straight and narrow in the narrative that I felt like it just ended up being very generic to me. And I was like hoping that there could have been some kind of, interesting originality interspersed with this, kind of classic story that we know that is at face value very straightforward. But I thought there could have been something a little bit more interesting, and they didn't really go into. They did go to a degree, but then it kind of stopped. But they didn't really go into the idea of why this entity, the boogeyman, this demon, this monster, this ghost like character really exists and why he is like tied into the story. And it was, which in some ways it's good. You don't get full on explanations, and that's not what I was looking for. But where you don't get full on explanations, sometimes that's good because you have to think about, the pieces of the puzzle that you're given. But I came away with the film, and even now, like we saw it last night, I came away from the film not really remembering or not really caring, and feeling like that part wasn't really gone into enough. And again, that's a little bit. I think that aspect of it is a little bit more of a nitpicking kind of thing. It's not that big of a deal. But the thing that drove me crazy about this film, the power for the boogeyman essentially is that he is most powerful in dark spaces where there's no light. That's where he is most powerful. And so there are all these scenes of where these characters, especially the daughter, they're going through all of these things where they're being clearly stalked by this monster. And there are all these scenes where the power isn't intentionally knocked out, the house is fully functional, and there are all these scenes of where they are in the dark kind of intentionally, and it's so cliche and so ridiculous where to prevent any of these things you could just easily turn on some lights in the house. There's a couple of these scenes that I just thought were just really stupid where they decide to go track this boogeyman down and confront him, but they go downstairs into the basement with just the use of like Christmas lights that they plug in these Christmas lights when they could just turn the lights on. And there's all these sequences of where the daughter, for instance, goes through this thing of where she almost gets fully abducted by the boogeyman, and so the family ends up leaving her alone to kind of relax and to kind of recover. but they leave her in this dark room with no lights, and she's in this big room by herself in the dark playing video games, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And there's all of these scenes of where I feel their interaction, with the boogeyman and their confrontations with the boogeyman would have been prevented if they just turned on a fucking light. And there were all of these sequences where it would be that way, and it was just kind of ridiculous. And it took me out of the movie, to be honest. It was, I just didn't get that. And I just felt like that was a really terrible misstep. And again, that whole kind of thing is happening throughout the second and third act of the film, especially the third act, where any of these, situations could have been easily prevented by them just turning on the lights. There's no indication from the monster or the boogeyman that he is controlling the light in the house or has destroyed any of the light fixtures in the house, because clearly the only lights they're using are these Christmas lights, and so clearly they have electricity in the house. So I'm just kind of like, why are they doing this? Why does this keep happening? So that was really, I was disappointed with that. And the other thing I was kind of disappointed with was the actual reveal of the monster. Again, I thought the one thing I thought was cool was that they did not show the boogeyman until like the third act. You get little glimpses of him, and that was pretty effective. That was pretty atmospheric, pretty creepy, kind of scary. The other thing I have to say is this film is not very scary. There were no moments of where I was legitimately, I got goosebumps. There are a few modern horror films where I feel like I legitimately got goosebumps, and I thought there were moments of during those films of where I thought it was legitimately scary. Newer films I can think of that had moments like that where it was like, actually kind of scary and creepy, very atmospheric. Robert Eggers' The Witch. There's moments in that film that I just think are generally creepy and kind of scary. And also, especially the scene in that film where the kid who goes missing in the woods gets lured into the witch's house. Like, that's just so creepy. And when he first comes across the witch in the woods, like, it's so creepy. Hereditary. I think there's some scenes in that, particularly around the Toni Collette's character in the third and fourth act, that are just terrifying. The opening sequence, I think, is really Goosebump City. But that movie has like that quality of where it actually gets under your skin. The Babadook. I think the Babadook has some moments where it's pretty creepy, especially around the mother's character. There are some good, generally good, really good scare moments. Creepy, scary moments in films that I think are really good. And suspenseful. But I felt like this movie didn't really have that. I felt like it was okay. There were some interesting things, but again, the whole light thing was just totally absurd and ridiculous and frustrating as all hell, in all honesty. And I was disappointed with it. The story was just so generic, and it was like a movie that you have seen every time. The pluses of it, very well directed. The cinematography was very cool cast. The writing was great. I did care about the characters. I thought the family dynamic was very cool. I really liked the father's character, and especially his relationship to the daughter. Thought that was very cool. I thought some of the sequences around the kids interacting with the boogeyman were very cool. But again, these were just little small kind of parts to the film. So, yeah, pretty mixed bag. I don't really recommend the film. I'm glad I almost saw it in the theater. I'm glad I didn't see it in the theater because, yeah, I don't know. It was kind of it was more mediocre than I thought it would be. But the main thing again was the whole like scenario around these characters in the light. I just thought that was like, ugh. So the second movie that we watched was the new Mission Impossible movie, Dead Reckoning Part 1. And this movie, I have to say, was totally awesome. I was super impressed. I've been on this funny kick. I've been watching some of the I recently bought two of the Mission Impossible movies, and so I've been kind of revisiting some of those movies. There's a few that I had not ever seen, the more recent ones, but I, for the most part, have stayed up with a lot of those films, and I've always liked them. But then it's been a few years since I've watched any of the Mission Impossible movies, and I've been watching a few of them. I bought two of them last month, one on Blu-ray and one on DVD. Rogue Nation was one that I bought on Blu-ray, and I was really, that kind of got my interest again into this franchise. And I was like, this movie is seriously high quality, and it's a seriously kick-ass movie. I need to start seeing these again, and so I've kind of got my interest has been rekindled, and I was really impressed with this movie. Out of the four movies, this one was by far and away the best of the new releases. Very cool movie, very very interesting. It came out this past, geez, I think it came out late this summer, so it's been out for a while. But I just got it at Opera House Video, with all of these other movies on DVD. Would be awesome to get it on Blu-ray, but very very cool movie. The thing that I loved about this movie was kind of the villain character and this story, this scenario. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was really original, and kind of left itself open story wise to so many different possibilities, and almost this thing of where Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, of course, where he's always got these uh, things stacked against him, where things seem literally impossible for him to conquer or to capture that that villain character, or or to find out how to unravel the conspiracy or the crime that's happening, or the crimes that are happening. But this one, I feel, because of the way the villain is portrayed, the stakes are even higher. And the whole centerpiece of this film is that it's centered on basically like a form of AI technology, an artificial intelligent technology that is created by the government, but then develops its own kind of independence, and it essentially goes rogue and becomes this superpower onto itself. And it's really interesting because it goes into how everything is controlled by tech, and on how this AI technology is able to control it and to manipulate it. And so it across the board, you see how it can just bring complete chaos to the world. And very cool. And again, it's very top, a very kind of contemporary thing with where we are at with technology and the emergence of AI technology, which is just wild. So it's not all that far removed from reality. But I thought that was the biggest part of this movie that I thought was really cool. It obviously put the movie in a very modern context, but it just felt like the stakes for this film were incredibly high all the time. So there was all this tension and throughout the film, which I thought was really great. And it just raised the bar, I felt, with the level of suspense in this film. And of course, there are some amazing sequences in this film. The Mission Impossible movies are known for their incredible locations and the amazing stunt work, and the insanity around Tom Cruise, who does all of his own stunt work. And this movie has some amazing sequences, particularly around the train sequence that involves this bridge that explodes. It's wild. It's wild. And there's a couple of scenes of where he is like parachuting off of this motorcycle that is just breathtaking. And to think of how that he is actually doing these stunts is just mind-boggling. It's fantastic, and fantastic movies. This movie is really great. I was really impressed. The other interesting thing that I thought was really original about this movie was that you're told like right away that this movie is going to be, it's in two parts. The Day of Reckoning, this was Day of Reckoning Part 1. Day of Reckoning Part 2 is coming out. I'm not sure when, sometime next year, probably next summer. They were, as far as from what I have read about this movie, or these movies, they were shot together. And it's the way they tied that together where it feels complete, but yet I came away after at the conclusion of this movie. I was I'm very much excited, and I definitely want to see the part two to this because it was hook, line, and sinker. They did a really great job, but it wasn't done in a way of where there's like this kind of ridiculous cliffhanger where it's not satisfying because you know there's a part two. They did a really good job at making this film like complete and feeling complete, but yet you want to see the second one. It wasn't a ridiculous kind of where it just kind of abruptly ends and you're kind of like, huh? That was one criticism, and probably really the only criticism that I have for Dune, Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune, which is for me the greatest sci-fi, my favorite science fiction book. Um, and that movie Dune has been broken up into three parts, and so the only criticism of that movie is that at the end of it, it does feel like it does kind of abruptly end, and it's a little bit awkward. Other than that, the movie is kind of a master. It is a masterpiece. It's amazing. It's the best, hands down, far and away, the best adaptation of that classic story. But it does have this funny thing at the end of where you do feel it's kind of abrupt and you're left hanging, even if you're, say really familiar with the story or you've seen a lot of the adaptations of the movie. There's been a couple of film adaptations and TV shows and various other things, but still, a good movie should be a good movie and you should go into it cold. And there is that little bit, it's almost like a weird hiccup, but it's really a small little detail. The movie's amazing. But I thought the way this Mission Impossible movie handled that kind of scenario was really spot on and just pretty exceptional. Again, it was like a feeling of conclusion and feeling satisfied as a fan and feeling satisfied as a viewer, but you can't wait to see the second one. I had a feeling like I could have watched the second one right after. Very, very cool movie. I highly recommend it. Tom Cruise has made some good movies, between that and the Maverick, Top Gun Maverick, which is, again, an awesome movie. I was so surprised on how good that film was. Very, very good. Really original and had so many great attributes to it. But this movie is fantastic, and I can't wait to see the second one. I would love to see this on Blu-ray. We watched a DVD copy of it, so yeah, I'm really excited for the future of this franchise and I love the storyline. Again, I love the storyline for this movie because it's really unique and it's kind of this all-encompassing element of danger, which I thought was really cool. So, thanks again. Hope everyone is recovering from their overstuffed bellies. And we will see you next time. Peace.